I'll also ask people when I'm hiring them, like, are you prepared to go live on a mountain for 6 months? Usually it's something like, well, that sounds great. Sure, I can come back, see my family now and then. And it's like, no, you can't. You have to go live on this mountain until the job is done.
Since last I interviewed you in like March of last year, I think you were at like 8 or 9 employees. You haven't quite done a 10x, but you're at like, 6, 7, 8x that employee count. You went from working, testing on farms to now you're doing, full-blown operations in a few different countries, and you're basically vertically integrating your entire business.
Yes.
So what's it been like, growing through that?
It's been pretty electric. Trying to think of an easy way to summarize all that activity. Well, I think that really the most salient explanation and starting place, right, is when Rainmaker deployed to Pendleton. So some people know this, some people don't know this, but we were originally testing in the Central Valley. That's where we were flying our first drones. Rainmaker at that time was essentially like a service, like a systems integrator and service provider. Like we didn't build much. We didn't build drones. We didn't build radar. We didn't build our own way of dispersing the aerosol. We didn't make our own aerosols. We had very little software. We were a small team, but we were planning to just buy a bunch of these different pieces, mix them together, and then modify the weather that way. None of that worked. Regulatorily, we were not permitted to continue testing in California. Let's put it that way.
What was the time frame around there?
That was September, October 2024.
Okay.
Yeah, it was really September 2024. Yeah. So up until that point in the company, we were learning a lot, but mostly just by getting punched in the face. Like off-the-shelf hardware providers either were lying to us about their capabilities, or their lead times were a year, or they just didn't have like the specifications that we even needed. Like there was nothing on market that we could get. And then when we had to find permissible airspace to test in and more frequent conditions to test in, we surveyed the United States over, trying to find an area where we could fly drones at altitude, sometimes at night, actually get a weather modification permit, all this kind of stuff. And so we moved the entire company to Pendleton, Oregon, which is a little town on the border of Idaho. It's 16,000 people, which incidentally is about the same size as El Segundo, but it is significantly less dense. 2,000 of the people that live there are prisoners. Most of the rest are farmers. And so we all moved into a warehouse, and we found out pretty quickly that we had to vertically integrate everything. So from October on, we decided to vertically integrate our drone. We decided to build our own radar. We decided to start doing our own particle design. That was harrowing.
Right.
Yeah, like
so you weren't planning on this. You just like had to do it.
Yeah, we had to. And like I said, we needed more we needed more permissible airspace. We needed more frequent clouds to test in. And then we found out we needed to vertically integrate all this stuff.
Right. So you had your own version of the whole like Russia trip where you figure out, everything costs way too much and it takes way too long.
Yeah, literally. Right. Yeah. No, we could not buy a rocket off the shelf.
Right.
And so those of us that lived through the Pendleton experience, I think that we all have like very different neurologies coming out of that. Because it was below zero most days. The warehouse that we were living in was ice cold. The heating barely worked. Mm-hmm. We converted all of the offices into bedrooms that smelled awful by the end of it, candidly. And that's really where like we earned our stripes. Since then, since like October when we kicked it in gear, and then December when we really started to get like our first evidence of effect from seeding, like from anthropogenic precipitation enhancement. Finally, Rainmaker feels like the rocket ship that we always kind of knew it would. But now, yeah, like we are over 50 people. We're operating in Utah, Colorado, Oregon, California, Texas, a country in the Middle East that like a lot of people may know. Argentina, we got our first guys deployed down there. So it is hyperscale time. Everywhere in the world should and will have weather modification program. I think every continent will have a weather modification program in about 2 years with Rainmaker. We'll try to make that faster, but that's about the timeline that I'm thinking right now. So it feels it feels very fast, finally, which is good. You know, a funny thing about starting early stage startups, I'll stop rambling in a sec, but it's like pre-seed companies, you're kind of just messing around. Like you're kind of just trying things,
Right.
you know? Because you don't have enough money, you don't have a big enough team, especially in hardware, to do much that's consequential. So you just got to get to the point where like you have the capital and resources and personnel to like actually enact the vision. And so it feels like that is underway now. Like we're actively making water, which is very satisfying.
Yeah. So I know like a lot of different startups, they put out basically some form of the Ernest Shackleton ad where it's like, come work in terrible conditions and all this stuff and you'll love it. We'll pay you almost nothing, yada, yada. But I think it's kind of bullshit in most cases. In Rainmaker's case, it's actually very real. If you want to live in a crate or like die on top of a, snowy mountain, this is the place to be. How do you like filter for people like that?
Yeah. So, you're in part referencing like that Twitter post that I
Right.
made, right? So the Rainmaker forward operations core, it is, I think, tapping into this like latent spirit that all people have had since the beginning of time, but there's nowhere to express that and fulfill that in modern life. And that's like the desire to adventure, the desire to be like a real pioneer. Because you can go be a startup founder or employee in SF and like you're gonna grind, right? Or you can like backpack the world and see different sites around Europe or Southeast Asia. But if it's leisure, it's not really adventure because there's no real challenge. If it's work in an office, there's no real adventure, even if it is like a grind. So the forward operations core, like the men and women that are going to go starting that already have, but then really in earnest and at scale, starting in October this year, they're going to be essentially like oil roughnecks, national parks folk, Marine Corps retirees, like veterans. We filter for people that desire adventure and that have grit. And the funny thing about that is like we've had people from I was about to say Blackwater, not the mercenary company. Blackstone? Is that the
Blackstone,
yeah,
the
Blackstone?
like equity or private
Yeah.
equity
Yeah,
place.
we've had
Yeah.
financial analysts from Blackstone apply to become forward operating specialists. Just because they're like, hey, I make a lot of money, I hate my life and desk job. Like I want to go live an adventure. And so the people that we've been hiring for that, hiring about 50 right now, they are true adventurers. That is what we're looking for above anything else.
Yeah, I know that the like basically the retention is absolutely crazy because I talked to a whole bunch of people and leading up to this, and it's effectively like, someone at the company will, say like you should come join, and then someone's like, I don't know if I want to, and then they like come stay for a week or whatever, and then like, holy shit, I can't believe I haven't been here already, and I definitely don't want to leave,
Mm-hmm.
and I don't know, it definitely you have a way of getting people excited. How do you manage through? There's another thing that I heard again and again was every 2 months or 3 months, it's like a completely different company.
Yeah.
How do you manage through like growing through those stages?
Pain tolerance.
Right.
Yeah, I mean, like I said, over the summer we were fooling around in the Central Valley. Then in October and November we were like just barely starting to figure out how to build our own drones. Uh, December and January we started serious operations. Uh, February through April, like we had a regular cadence. May, a lot of our engineering staff was back in Gundo, and then we started scaled production of like our newest drones, and like have our radar deployed out in the field. A lot of personnel have joined since then. A lot of new programs have opened up since then. Um, I think that I'm not exactly sure how frequently you should go through like corporate overhauls and structural overhauls, but doing that often seems like a good way to stay dynamic. Like a lot of companies get slothful and lazy fast, and so like forcing ourselves to break existing systems just to create like the currently optimal version of them, that's been good. But everybody at Rainmaker is extremely autonomous. They have a ton of personal ownership. There are too many radically different scientific, engineering, business development, and regulatory dynamics for me to, even if I wanted to, micromanage them. And so by hiring people that, can get the job done themselves and identify problems themselves, we've been able to make it through all of these reorientations.
Yeah, I would like to know like what's a typical like week in the life of Augustus Doricko in 2025 right now?
They vary a lot. Well, I would probably say there's a 50-50 chance that I am in either 50% probability that I'm in Los Angeles in El Segundo. The other 50% is either me in Saudi Arabia, DC, or one of our program areas throughout the United States, so like Utah or something. If I'm there, then it's probably calls really late at night because everybody's on LA time. So I'm up in the middle of the night trying to catch up with the team. It's trying to break down like the regulatory issues like we were having in Florida. I was there for a while. Maybe we'll touch on that. And then back in Gundo, it's trying to just get the appropriate resources, personnel, financial, or just like thinking sessions to the different engineering programs as they require it. Emails. I read a lot of emails. I don't know. I guess because we're not in the operating season right now, we've probably transitioned from like more glamorous adventure camping up at the top of mountains, flying drones to office work, setting up all the logistics for the programs that are currently granted underway in Texas and Argentina, but really are going to start again in earnest in October.
How do you think about pushing forward with maximum aggression while also ensuring that you don't, physically die?
Yeah, I probably come a little bit closer to physically dying. Have we talked about spider eyes? Have we
No.
talked about that?
But I heard about this from Chris last night. So I
Yeah.
was like, oh.
So, that October period, Rainmaker moved to Oregon. We acquired a company. We acquired one of the old legacy cloud seeding companies.
Let's talk about that. What was
Yeah.
that deal?
Well, how about I do that? I'll do that in a
After,
sec.
after.
And everybody thought it was pretty crazy to acquire a company because we were like essentially seed stage. I was a little bit stressed out and not sleeping a whole lot. And it turns out if you sleep so little for so long, then these essentially microscopic arachnids that live all over your skin will start to like burrow into your skin and eat you alive. And they happened to target my sebaceous glands in my eyeballs. And so I had these like microscopic arachnids eating my eyes. And funnily enough, ivermectin is the only way to cure it, which took a lot of medical research to figure out. But it's more or less solved now. So I definitely tend more towards the, grind yourself into dirt.
Right.
And it's, what, like you're a man in your 20s.
Right.
Like you should really leave it all on the court. You should be on the verge of death at all times and live a very vital life. But like,
the bear case for Rainmaker is that, at some point, some autoimmune problem, your like eyes, you go blind or something. Because you work so hard, actually.
I think Neuralink will solve that.
Right.
Yeah, exactly.
Elon's going to come and clutch at Series
exactly,
B.
Exactly. Yeah. Elon, please give me the eyeball enhancement.
Right.
Yeah. So I don't know how do you balance that. Probably don't.
Did you change anything after the spider eyes, or are you just actually, saying we're going to recover from that, take some horse, medication, and then exactly, horse dewormer, and then just keep on grinding?
No, I have a lifetime supply of horse dewormer.
Incredible.
Now that's the solution.
Awesome. Okay. So I think so. There's the acquisition, but there's also this other aspect where you tweeted it back probably a few months ago now, basically. With your vision or your strategic vision, not all your investors agreed with that vision, and it felt very good to be kind of vindicated or proven right that you could actually execute this thing that you were trying to do. What was like that idea, and then how do you manage investors
regarding the acquisition? You mean?
Yeah, and when they're strategic, when they think that you're making potentially a mistake, but you believe something else and you want to build the company that you want to build.
Yeah, I mean, well, what I would say is I'm grateful that I'm on the same page with everybody now. And I think, like it's good that strategic decision was not a blunder and it panned out because we all see the benefits in it. But basically the context is this. One The cloud seeding market essentially does not exist because it's never been a viable product before, right? Even if the tech in its nascent state has existed for 80 years because nobody was ever able to prove that it was working, nobody was willing to buy it except some very, very desperate watersheds like, those in Utah or in Nevada, but small scale, right? So, how do you run a deep tech company when the market does not exist? Like even for fusion, like people will buy energy. There's an energy market. There is no water from the sky market right now, or at least there wasn't when we were starting this. So there's a very small old school market as it stands. The sales cycles are long because you're primarily doing B2G, business to government. So how do we grow? How do we even get to test this stuff in the next year, 2 years? Well, we're not going to win a government contract and get through an appropriation cycle in 12 months. Our only option is, while we're pursuing these new contracts and appropriations, buying one of the old school legacy companies.
How many of those were there in the U.S.?
Four.
Okay.
So there was one in Texas, one in California, one in Utah, one in North Dakota. Technically five. There's one in Colorado as well. There's four remaining. And so we were from the jump, we knew we were going to buy one of these companies, inject our tech into it, improve the operation, and then upsell from there. That was the market thesis from the beginning. And everyone, like us, to some extent, was like, okay, that makes sense. But then when the rubber hits the road, and you're like, all right, we're going to shell out a lot of money to buy a company, take on debt to buy a company, spend some venture equity to buy a company. Yes, the company at this time is actually almost equivalent headcount to the existing organization. We're going to double in size with a bunch of people in another state. It seemed a little silly.
Was this going to be like the first time where you guys had actual operations, like you just acquire operations kind of thing?
So we'd been doing a lot of tests,
Okay.
right?
Yeah.
But we didn't have any commercial contracts yet. So yeah, like the plan from the very beginning was to acquire operations and improve them with our tech stack. And that's what we did. But I think, I think then it seemed crazy. Now, though, I have a lot of founders, not to like leak alpha, right? But I have a lot of people reaching out to me because I think for deep tech, this play makes a lot of sense. There's all these legacy industries. You have a better product. You cannot reach scale as quickly if you just outcompete them over long sales cycles. So just like roll it up, use different financial products than venture equity, and then still get the software margins or whatever like a real tech company can, and then you'll be 10 times larger, 10 times faster.
I think you mentioned at one point that basically you don't think that enough founders think about their like capital structure and how to, raise different, forms of financial instruments. How do you think about that? And like specifically in the case of, you did this thing with debt, but you're also going to be creating like a land fund at the, first, second quarter or something of next year to basically buy land and then, make it arable, or I don't know, arable, but yeah, exactly. Arable.
Yeah. So there's two different things that we're thinking about there. One is financial instruments to operate like your, call it core business, and then there's like more value capture on the stack. I think the former is applicable to almost all companies. The latter is more unique to Rainmaker. Everybody like says that they don't want to be diluted, but like how many practical steps do you take to mitigate that? Your growth trajectory should be asymptotic, right? Like you should be worth significantly more every year, multiples more every year, than you should be worth multiples more every year. And so if you can finance a lot of your equipment, not attritable equipment, so you probably shouldn't finance drones that are crashing. But if you finance a lot of your equipment, if you take out debt either for, like I think even debt for a sales team is interesting, right? Because you get a pretty clear return on investment there. Software companies kind of do this right now. But if you set up project finance, right? Like if you're a manufacturing company, you don't necessarily need to own the factory. Like the New Industrial Corporation, Greg Bernstein owns this. He's one of the founders of it. They're offering project finance where, okay, you're a company, you have some manufacturing process, you do sell an end product, but like, should you use venture dollars to build multiple factories? No, probably not. You should actually take project finance, so set up a subsidiary LLC that owns that factory, have some outside partner buy equity in that factory, put debt into that the top co owns, and then pay back the debt, gradually buy back the equity in that subsidiary company. That's a way to mitigate dilution. Like I know a lot of manufacturing companies, manufacturing startups that are spending venture dollars on factories, and
It just doesn't make as much sense.
if you're trying to minimize for dilution, no, probably not. Now, the second thing that you mentioned is like the land fund.
Yeah.
Um, we are producing water in areas that do not have water. There are places in Arizona that have the same soil mineral content as the Central Valley, but they don't have water, right? The Central Valley used to be a wasteland. It used to be deserts and swamps. Then we brought water to it. It's now the most productive agricultural region in the United States.
That's like an example of actual U.S. already terraforming something.
Exactly, right? It's us already modifying the water cycle. It's not playing God, it's just engineering. And it is terraforming. If Rainmaker can bring water to these desert regions, sure, we can sell the water, but if the water is being bought, that means people are creating more value with the water than they are paying for it. So really what Rainmaker should and will do is buy up the land that can be terraformed and then either flip the agricultural assets once they are viable or just own them and then make money off of whatever you're growing there.
Yeah. Okay. I know, a while back, you've got this like, discussion with Florida right now. But I was kind of thinking a while back, I texted you and you said, I love fighting. And I was kind of wondering or do you have any like moment in your childhood or something about your childhood that made you just enjoy the, exhilaration of fighting and like fighting for something that you care about?
Yeah. Well, probably a lot of moments like that, but related to loving fighting, this isn't so much learning to love to fight, but learning to love like pain or exhaustion. I was in something called the Student Spaceflight Experiment Program, where a bunch of high schools and universities compete to design an experiment conducted on the ISS. And so my high school team was selected for that. Very cool. It was not like revolutionary science. We were doing some early, simple biology stuff, just on like yeast cell replication, that kind of thing. But during that period of my life, my junior year of high school, in order to keep up with school, because college applications were coming up, do competitive sports, competitive debate, and then the Student Spaceflight Experiment Program, you had to be awake longer hours and just keep working. And so there were most nights during that phase of life where I was up till, I don't know, 2, 3, 4 a.m. This kind of sounds like hustle porn. Like I'm not trying to make it out that way, but it was the most satisfying portion of my high school because I was doing so much and it was all extraordinarily rewarding work. And I was in love with space. I still think space is spectacular. Partially I'm building Rainmaker because I think terraforming other planets will be a big deal in the future. But like because of how meaningful that period of life was and because of how exhausted I was all the time, I ended up associating that sort of like, joint aches and pains, headaches,
feeling of pain towards like success
deep,
and
deep meaning. Yeah, exactly. And so that I think was probably the moment that I would say I learned to love the taste of blood in my mouth, if you will.
Yeah.
That was probably like the year.
Yeah, it's interesting because like if you don't have or if you're not working on something that you really care about, you will burn out. And the fact that you're able to like kind of die working is a really good, and like go back to doing it is a good sign that you care about the thing that you're working on.
I care about nothing more in the world than I suppose Jesus Christ, Rainmaker Technology Corporation, and then everything else.
Yeah. What are you going to be super focused on over the next like 6 or 12 months?
So this there's going to be a more formal announcement of what's to come. Uh, I'll talk about where this is at a later date, but the biggest weather modification program in the world outside of China is going to begin this year. And Rainmaker's running that.
Awesome.
our goal is to reach parity with the largest desalination plant in the United States in terms of water production.
And how much water production is that?
It's about 10 billion gallons in 6 months. I think that we can do far, far more than that over the course of the next year, 2 years. But if we reach parity with that, then I think what we'll have de-risked is, in public perception at least, the notion that cloud seeding is like an effective means at producing water at scale, and that cloud seeding really is water infrastructure. That is, insofar as it's a technical endeavor, qualifying our drones in really severe conditions, getting lots and lots of hours on the system, qualifying that we can do appropriate phase detection and precipitation rate measurements from our radar. We've done some of that, but the reason why we're in Argentina right now is to continue testing and operating in glaciogenic conditions, in like snowpack enhancement conditions, so that all of the system has been de-risked and also has a lot of reps under it, has a lot of cycles and hours out in the field. And then logistically, like I said, we're hiring 40, 50 people for that program.
How far along are you on that like hiring spree?
Not far enough. Apply at rainmaker.com/careers to the forward operating specialist role. Yeah, I mean, we've got about 30% of those people hired.
Really?
Yeah. And we need all the rest of them onboarded by August 1st, so that we can train them appropriately and send them out to the field. But it is really like, that is far and away my biggest focus. It is that is the foundation for becoming the biggest water utility in the Western United States. If we do that, then we can rinse and repeat that in every other target watershed, and in the 2026-2027 operating season, be the biggest water utility in the U.S.
And what is the typical like operating season for Rainmaker?
Yeah, so given the state of the technology right now, what we do is we identify where there is supercooled liquid water in clouds. So water that's below 32 degrees Fahrenheit but hasn't yet frozen. It turns out water doesn't instantaneously freeze until like -38 or Celsius, that is. So if there is liquid in cloud that hasn't been frozen yet, but that is cold, then we'll target that, fly drones into it, disperse silver iodide, that's the material that we use right now, that freezes the liquid into big snowflakes that then fall. They'll melt back into rain. If it's warm beneath the cloud, they'll stay as snow otherwise. The time of year in the northern hemisphere where those conditions exist is October through April. So that is, in the northern hemisphere, our operating season. In the southern hemisphere, it's the inverse. Right now, we're doing new particle design and a bunch of new atmospheric research to figure out how to continue operating through the fall, spring, summer. I think that in 2 years, that will be sufficiently de-risked such that the entire world all the time will be, will have an atmosphere that is engineerable.
Yeah. Did you, so did I get it right that basically in September last year, you figure out about all these like lead times and all this terrible stuff, and by March or no, like May maybe, you're using your own tech?
Well, no, we were by November.
By
At the
November?
end of November, we had our own drones. Then April, we had our own radar.
Wild.
Yeah.
Okay. What was the process of like getting that built and then like shipping?
I will give a big shout out to, Jackson Schultz, Jordan McMillan. Those are the engineers that really made, a lot, Camillo, he's another one of our engineers here, Clinton Bain. These guys were just workhorse monsters on the engineering team, getting Elijah, our drone platform, up and running. And we went through a lot of iterations. We had the V0, the V0.1, the V0.2, the V0.5, the V0.75, the V0.9, the V0.99, and then 999.
What was the average time in between versions?
Weeks.
Weeks.
Less than weeks, I think.
Less than
Yeah,
weeks.
yeah.
Okay.
In some cases, it was probably like a week. So we were iterating pretty fast. We crashed a few.
Yeah, tell me. Got any good stories?
Yeah, I mean, this is kind of a universal experience of people that went to Pendleton, but what would happen, Harry's going to be upset listening to this because I think, we ultimately did report it to the test range, but, you fly up into these severe icing conditions. We didn't have an anti-icing system developed yet. We're flying into clouds with a ton of cold liquid water. Wow, surprise, that ice is up. So on our V1, we solved that. But what was happening then was we would seed. If we were too aggressive, then ice would accrete onto the drone or the winds would just take it away. And then, if it's flying up at 2-3 kilometers, that thing is going to land 2-3 kilometers downwind. So it would be snowing, the fields would be wet, it would be about 20 degrees Fahrenheit, and then you don't exactly know where the drone landed. You lost comms with it a little bit before it crashed, and then we spread out about 100 meters apart and would just walk for a mile, 2-3 miles, but not on like a road, like through mud at night. And then the trucks that we took to get close to where the drone was, they always got stuck in the mud. We were covered in mud digging these things out. Our hands were numb.
Was this the time when you were like tweeting, "I need a truck, I'll buy it for any
yes,
cost"?
Yes, yeah. No, we got 3 trucks stuck in one night, and I was like, we are going to perish out here.
Who came to your rescue?
We woke up some of the other guys that weren't on that operation, and they came out. Although a few other people offered to help, so thanks to the dudes in Washington that did offer to help that night. But yeah, they woke up. They drove out. I think it was like 2 or 3 in the morning by the time they got there. We had done a lot of digging. We'd probably moved a few cubic meters of mud. We also learned, dude, another thing, we were morons. I was a moron for not thinking about this. Some of the trucks didn't come packed with shovels, so we were digging with our hands. Yeah, we did a lot of stuff wrong. But now, the lesson from that our forward operating corps has is a full build out of all of the things that you need to get a truck out of mud.
Got a nice little checklist.
We have a great checklist now.
Great checklist. Okay. So you're trying to scale in I don't know, at least 3 or 4 places that I know of, and I assume more. How do you split your time in between? Do you just have, I was talking with Chris last night, and at one point, somewhere in the Middle East or whatever, there's just a few people in a crate, and they're just grinding away.
Yeah.
And then there's other people elsewhere, but how do you, just bring on someone and just throw them into the deep end to be out there?
Yeah.
He was not expecting that, I don't think.
No. Well, the funny thing about Chris, one of our forward deployed engineers, is we hired him in Pendleton. He hadn't seen El Segundo until 2025. We hired him, and he was immediately living in a warehouse. So, if you come to Rainmaker, it's more, it's a lot more organized. It's a lot more mature now than it was, 9 months ago. Thank God. But it is pandemonium still. It's extremely intense. There's a lot going on all the time. You probably hear the machine shop humming. People are running around calling out what needs doing. You kind of know what you're in for just when you get to the office.
As soon as you arrive.
Yeah. And so I'll also ask people when I'm hiring them, are you prepared to go live on a mountain for 6 months?
Right.
And so we're very transparent about that. And then you can kind of assess, some people want adventure, but they don't have fire in them. You can kind of feel that.
They say they do, but they're not really, they're not really with it.
Yeah. Usually it's something well, that sounds great. And I'm sure I can come back and see my family once in now and then. And it's no, you can't. You have to go live on this mountain until the job is done. And so, yeah, I mean, it's mostly if we've maintained a culture of sufficiently aggressive, spirited, adventurous people such that they attract their friends who are capable engineers that are also spirited people. And then anybody else that isn't already a network, they're either electrified at the opportunity and know what they're getting into, or are terrified and run away. It's like that "don't work at Anduril" ad thing.
Exactly.
It's we don't need to tell people don't work at Rainmaker. It's you probably shouldn't work here. Yeah. Probably this is going to be way too much for you.
Is it are you finding it relatively easily as you're scaling like crazy on the hiring side to find people like that, or are there false positives or anything like that?
Well, on the one hand, it's pretty easy to hire. It's pretty easy to attract talent when a company's doing well. So we're blessed insofar as we have that dynamic. People want to be part of something that's really consequential. Rainmaker, terraforming deserts, making water abundant. That's pretty straightforward. Caring about like our ecosystem and lived environment. That makes it easier to hire. A lot of people want adventure. A lot of people have been beaten down by modernity in their desk job, and so they're really drawn towards this sort of working culture. We've had to turn down a lot of people just because they clearly would not have been able to survive in this dynamic. So it's hard to get great people. I feel really lucky that we have been able to so far, and that we have a pipeline of great people that are interested.
Yeah. I think I've kind of come to it more and more over the past year that like the mission is just way more important than I thought it ever was. Like I don't think the whole like pivoting, a bunch of times into an idea really works. I think
It works
that,
in software. It works
sure,
in SaaS kind
sure,
of.
sure,
If your only object is to make a company that makes money,
right,
you can do that. Yeah.
right. But it doesn't, if you're doing that, you're competing against every other company that's also doing that. And what I've noticed is like, with the Rainmaker, if you want that adventure, if you want that like extremely painful, cold, dark, wet operating conditions, this is the only place to get that experience
Yep.
while getting paid to do it.
Mm-hmm.
How do you have any advice for like founders who are thinking about, how to come up with the right mission? Yeah.
Well, not to be a Jordan Peterson guy, because I'm really not. Although once upon a time I was. Um, you, if you stay in one place, you only have as much information as is accessible in that place, right? But if you move in any direction, you'll get more information about what's in that direction. Um, so even if you don't know where to go, you should run at something. You probably shouldn't start a company until you are sure as to where you should run, but at the very least, run. Like move, start figuring things out. And maybe that means like joining. It probably means joining an impressive organization that you resonate with the mission of, even if it's not like what you want your life's work to be, um, because you will find a problem set there that will give you more information about what you can build. And I also think too, a lot of people like they say, ever since I was 5 years old, I wanted to. I'm not gonna neg anybody. I have some friends that say stuff like this. Ever since I was 5 years old, I wanted to run like a solar company or something like that. And it's like, no, you didn't. No, actually, you didn't. Like you stumbled through a series of very serendipitous coincidences that led you to being both capable and interested in the problem. So I would say like if you don't have a mission right now, it's not that your life is without purpose, and you don't have to like fake it. I stumbled into Rainmaker. Like I never thought that I would be as engrossed in atmospheric science as I am now. I never thought I would run a cloud seeding company until like 2.5 years ago. So if you want to find that sort of mission and purpose, just go do stuff. Go work at a company. You probably shouldn't like search for an idea. Like you probably shouldn't tinker. A lot of people, it's also big in SF. Like, well, I'm just gonna like tinker on side projects until like no, don't do that either. You won't make anything of consequence if you're tinkering. Like you need to be part of something that has the potential to be like impactful at scale to figure out real problems. Because otherwise it's like, what? You're going to learn how to use an Arduino? Cool. That's not going to change the world, bro. So yeah, I would just say like work at an incredible organization. It's kind of trite advice, but
Well,
like
it's kind of funny because like I think everyone knows in the back of their mind, like if you ask them what is some company that you could, go work with, or what's the most meaningful company to you, like they have an idea in their mind for some company, but I don't think as many people would actually just go work for them. Like
they should just do that.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. So selling to governments is like extremely difficult, I'd assume. But you and your team seems, pretty successful at it, at least so far. Do you have any advice for people that are like taking on, that type of sales cycle and how to do it? Like, how did you do it?
Yeah. Well, I guess to not give myself or us credit, there's a dynamic in deep tech which is, whereas with software, it's very easy to build something, but finding demand for something that you build might be difficult, right? In deep tech, if you're producing energy or hardware or water, there's actually boatloads of demand. Like people are desperate for these things. It's just that producing it in a meaningfully more cost-effective and novel way is really hard to do. Like the tech is way harder to build. So in a certain sense, it was not so hard to sell people on having more water. Like they've always wanted more water. It was just building the system that was the difficult part and then giving it to them. So there's that dynamic on the one hand. Beyond that, you're not going to do it by cold calling. You're going to be in state capitals. You're going to be in towns that you never thought you were going to go to. You're going to get a regular barber and a favorite sandwich shop in Tallahassee, Florida. You're going to know a lot of people around Idaho. These are the places that we've gone. But you got to be boots on the ground. You got to be in person. People have to know you well enough to trust you. See a lot of FaceTime, so you are top of mind for them. You should probably be on airplanes a lot. You should probably be going places a lot.
How often are you on an airplane?
I think I went. So there's an app called Flighty. It tracks like your flights. I think in terms of miles, circumnavigated the Earth 14 times last year.
How many hours is that on a plane? Is that like 24 hours per?
It was weeks. It was weeks.
Right.
Yeah, cumulatively, it was weeks of time on planes, which kind of seems like a waste. However, it's great deep thinking time and email time. So if you actually and catching up,
I don't
on
know
sleep
why
time,
that is. Like you, for some reason, do get much better at emails on planes. I have noticed this.
I think it's because with less protection from the troposphere when you're at higher altitudes, the cosmic rays enhance your quality of thought in such a manner that tunes you into the email latent space.
Optimizes your brain for emailing.
Yes,
okay.
yeah, it does.
So I know that you're having, I wouldn't necessarily a fight, but I would definitely say, you're working with the government of Florida to come to the right decision.
Yes, exactly.
Right? And help them understand the benefits of your technology and what you guys are trying to do. How did that start? Why is that such a contentious, discussion?
Okay, so in 2023, I started talking about weather modification. Weather modification up until that point was really seen in one of two ways. It was either this like third rail atmospheric science research topic that nobody took seriously, or it was the subject of like QAnon type conspiracy theory. I was neither of those things. I was taken seriously by tech to some extent. Like I don't take myself seriously, but I was running a business that was real, right? So it validated in some capacity the concerns about the QAnon people that weather modification was real. And it was not this like far away academia land thing. Like it was tangible. It was on X.
And you were the guy.
And I was the guy. I was the Bill Gates deep state plant.
Microchipping.
Yeah. And so we caused enough commotion about it that people knew it was real. That was coincident with essentially Trump's re-election, which involved RFK. So the QAnon constituency was empowered. RFK was talking about chemtrails and said that it should be criminalized. And that soup of circumstances resulted in multiple different states proposing bans on all forms of weather modification and geoengineering. And
that includes like solar radiation management.
Yeah, and so most people don't know about cloud seeding, about solar radiation modification, or about like what people suppose to be chemtrails.
And they also think like that silver iodide is colloidal silver, right?
Yeah, which
exactly. Doesn't help.
No, when all these things are mixed together and there's not clear information and like active evangelization, which I try to do often, then it all just kind of seems spooky, and so people say ban it. It's also very partisan, like very practically speaking, because solar radiation modification is a proposed solution to anthropogenic warming of the climate. Republicans sort of default hate it because they view it as like Obama stuff or something. But anyway, this is all mixed together. Um, and nobody knows what cloud seeding is. And so they just say, well, you know what? Ban all of it. Ban all of it. It all seems bad. And so what we have been doing in Florida and Tennessee and other states is just talking to legislatures about the fact that, like, well, listen, whether chemtrails are real or not, you can ban them if you want. I don't think that they're real. I haven't seen good evidence for it. I think it's just contrails. But whether they're real or not, sure, ban
What
them.
is the difference between chemtrails and contrails?
Contrails are just condensation that comes from the turbulence and water vapor deposited from aircraft engines when
They're flying.
they're flying.
Mhm.
Chemtrails are purported to be a deliberate attempt to poison people by spraying, coal fly ash or some other neurotoxin on people. I don't think they're real. And so really all it's boiled down to is going to these legislatures saying, hey, totally understand your concerns. These are the reasons why cloud seeding is not actually of any consequence to the environment. Like, there's no pollution from the material that we're using. There's no adverse ecological consequences. It's just a water supply tool. Solar radiation modification, significantly less well understood. It's significantly newer. It's not tested. It is global and lasts much longer. And so, like, I understand your scrutiny there. However, cloud seeding, should you want to produce water for your state, is a great tool. So even if you want to ban those, you should keep this. And that's what states like Montana did. They proposed a wholesale ban and then carved out cloud seeding and permitted that because they want water for their farms.
Yeah.
Florida, they keep having wildfires. People all think it's a wet state. 30,000 acres of land burned down from wildfire.
How much is that worth?
Miami-Dade County,
Like
hundreds of millions. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
So 30,000 acres burned down in April. They keep having wildfires throughout the state. Their cattlemen and citrus orchards don't have enough water. This is just a way to produce more water for them. That's what we're trying to bring to the state of Florida.
Have you been able to like get people in Florida to say, this is how it would impact my farm or whatever?
We were too late to doing that. In this upcoming cycle, we will.
Okay.
This was a learning in GA, right? Like, I think that in government affairs, you need people on your side. One tech startup from Los Angeles that goes to a red state talking about weather modification, default untrustworthy.
Yeah.
So getting more people involved that like want the technology rather than just the legislators is the lesson that we had to learn.
Does it become like harder if you guys publish, that you raised money or anything like that? Like, is it better to be a smaller company trying to do this versus like some big corporation?
Good question. I don't know yet.
Okay.
We'll see.
Okay. All right. Let's end on what was the like most difficult or painful thing over the past 12 months that you've had to overcome?
Most difficult or painful thing other than spiders eating my eyes. Man, I mean, I guess, uh, I'll give you two answers. One is like probably the cool tech answer. The other is more earnest. I don't really think that you can have it all. I think that you have to make trades. I often struggle with being a good enough son and brother and Christian because I have made work such a priority. Um, I think it's not impossible, but I think it's really hard to allocate a lot of time to like meaningful, deep friendships and relationships with your family and otherwise. If you do work a lot, that's like a real trade, and I think that grates on you, and it's a trade that I think is worth making. Like, I'm doing that actively, but I think that is hard. Not to be like a soft boy, but that definitely is top of mind. Then more than that, um, I don't know. I think that most of our difficulty is self-imposed because of pace. Um, like, I think that if we were way less aggressive, this would be a way more tolerable and comfortable situation. But like, deciding to move the entire company to another state for 6 months and living in a warehouse that was always cold and vertically integrating our entire tech stack, that was very hard, and we did not need to do that.
You didn't have to, but it was like the optimal
it,
move
it
if you
was the
wanted
best
to move
thing to do.
fast.
Yeah. So really, I think most of the difficulty, like the reason why Rainmaker's primary like value is that we like the taste of blood in our mouth is because if you are being sufficiently aggressive and ambitious, then reality should be punching you in the face constantly. And in order to tolerate that, you have to Pavlov yourself into loving the sensation of pain, right? Like you have to, like that student space flight experiment program thing, like you have to love that sort of exhaustion.
Getting up, you're exhausted, but you're just like, hell yeah, let's get after it.
Yeah, basically. So I think really it's more self-imposed than anything. I think that's the kind of difficulty we've encountered.
I want to know how fast or like how much time did it take for you to make the decision to move to Oregon for 6 months? Like what was the period where you're like, oh, this might be the move that we need to make?
2 weeks.
2 weeks.
Yeah, it was basically like.
And how many people did you move?
A dozen at the time. And kudos to all of Rainmaker, because everybody's like dropping the hat. Yeah, that's what we have to do. That is the right decision. We all have to move, and so we did. These are a bunch of heroes. Like this company is comprised of extraordinarily special people. You know this, but yeah. It was they're a good group. But yeah, it was basically like, okay, can't fly in California, not enough good testing conditions. Where can we go? We go to Oregon. Let me think about it. Let's go to Oregon. And kind of the flow.
And you went.
Yeah.
Awesome. Okay. Great place to end it. Thank you.
Sweet, man.